This is a question we actually got from a YouTube listener who goes by WottonPQ9FF. And they ask, with all the disarray and rebellion in the Tory party, what's the likelihood of a confidence vote anytime soon? And this is a well-timed question because it follows the former minister Simon Clarke's piece in the Telegraph earlier this week, calling on Rishi Sunak to go. He wrote that the party faces an electoral massacre under his leadership and warned extinction is a very real possibility for our party. He said he does not get what Britain needs and he is not listening to what the British people want. And instead of conviction, we have convention. And there's a long list of asks in this piece for Sunak to focus on, from migration crackdown to house building to public service reform. I mean, how fair is the piece, Freddie?
I thought it was quite a good piece. I thought Labour should probably take note. There's some good lines in there that they could probably use.
Well, there's one that really reflects Labour's line, that he doesn't understand Britain.
Yeah,
which
that
Labour
caused
got in
some
a bit
controversy.
of trouble for.
Yeah. No, it was fascinating. What was more interesting in many ways was the fact that not many people came out following the piece and supported Simon Clarke. I found it slightly strange because it seemed as if he hadn't notified people like Liz Truss or some of the other big traditional rebels within the party. They essentially disowned him, and I think there was lots of condemnation on Tory WhatsApp groups saying that look, we're doing so poorly on the polls now, it's not the time to disunify the party. But it was interesting. Going to the question whether there will be a confidence vote soon, no, I don't think there will be. You need 53 letters essentially sent to the 1922 committee for there to be a confidence vote in Rishi Sunak. Now, the key thing is that there's not much time for the rebels to build up that number before the next election. You can't really do it, obviously, a month or 2 months out. So now it would have to be now, and I don't think there is enough people in the party to do so. Yeah,
because Simon Clarke has since said, he was speaking for himself. He wasn't sort of representing a wider...
Only himself.
A wider movement, yeah. Can you explain to our listeners sort of where he sits in the Tory firmament? Because he was a Liz Truss minister, wasn't he, for levelling up?
Yeah, he's very much one of those sort of free market, Trussite Tories. He was also supportive of Boris Johnson, but, his hobby horses are deregulation in the housing sector. He wants lower taxes. He comes from that wing of the party. And I think that wing have been very frustrated with Rishi Sunak because they see him more of a fiscal conservative. He's more concerned about not borrowing too much to, for instance, fund tax cuts as Liz Truss did. And they've been slightly disappointed on housing and other things. They're essentially saying that the party is stagnating. We look at the polls and, as he said, we're facing electoral massacre, which is true. They might narrow as we go towards the election, but as they are right now, it's extremely a dire situation for the Conservatives. And they're essentially saying we need to do something radical to change that. Now, there's a question over whether Simon Clarke's article was fully sincere. Was it really about saying to the party, look, we need a new prime minister? David Gork, who writes a column for us, he wrote an interesting piece this week, which essentially said that because it's completely unrealistic to replace Rishi Sunak, and even if they did that, why on earth would that help the Conservative Party with their dire polling? People hate the party, they hate the past 14 years, they hate the fact that the public realm is collapsing, they hate Boris Johnson, they hate Liz Truss. So it's not as if getting rid of Rishi Sunak will solve their problems. Given all that, what's Simon Clarke actually doing? Well, perhaps he's trying to shift blame for the forthcoming election loss onto Rishi Sunak. Simon Clarke, as I said, a member of Boris Johnson's government, a key ally of Liz Truss, he doesn't want those prime ministers and their agendas to be blamed. He'll want Rishi Sunak's agenda to be blamed. And if he can create the narrative now that it's Rishi Sunak who lost the election and it wasn't Partygate and it wasn't the mini budget, which is actually when we saw the polling collapse, then it puts him in a better place and his faction in a better place to reclaim the party after the next election.
Yeah, I mean, this is where I actually do agree with Simon Clarke in some of his piece, because he says,
we should have got him on, really.
Yeah, this is the Simon Clarke fan club. Because he makes the point, which has come across very strongly from Tory MPs since the piece came out, that some might feel it's ridiculous to change leader again. And you outlined all of the different leaders that we've had in a very short space of time. The public may think it looks like chaos, but I don't know if it necessarily would be worse for them to do that, because sometimes what you hear from people is, well, at least Liz Truss had the good grace to resign when she messed things up. People will be used to, in their own workplaces, people going if they're not succeeding. And so I think it's not necessarily the worst idea in the world. I remember speaking to John Curtis, the polling expert, about this, and it was when Rishi Sunak was polling ahead of the Conservative Party and seemed to be sort of the one good thing in their favour. And he was saying, what's untested in terms of previous elections that we might compare the upcoming one to is what the effect of a new leader has on people's perceptions of a party. And so, it's not completely out there that if they changed a leader, then it might give them better prospects. It's just that who would that be? I still think that question is open.
Well, it was interesting, isn't it? Because Rishi Sunak is a new leader. He hasn't been in the job for that long.
Yeah.
But the problem was, as Simon Clarke puts it in his piece, he was an asset for the party. Now he's an anchor.
Yeah.
So I think the question for a new leader would be how quickly would they be tarnished by the party?
Yeah.
And that's what happened to Rishi Sunak.
Which is what's happened to him. Yeah.
And what he failed to do, and he should have done in his first speech outside of Downing Street, is disown Boris Johnson's lack of probity in office and disowned Liz Truss's chaotic approach to the economy. He didn't do so. He prioritised uniting the party, and I think he's seeing the consequences of that now.
Yeah, and over the Privileges Committee report on Boris Johnson, I mean, he should have done what Starmer's done with Corbyn, and actively
we've changed,
denounced that Johnson premiership. Thanks so much for watching. We'd love to know what you think. Please make sure you leave your comments below. And if you enjoyed watching this podcast, you can watch more of our videos on our YouTube channel. And don't forget to like and subscribe.